Well, joining us on the show this morning to discuss the electoral body's conduct of the supplementary elections that happened this past weekend and the situation in Adamawa State is Oluwole Osaze-Uzzi, former INEC Director for Publicity and Voter Education. Good morning and welcome to the morning show.
Good morning, Ayo, and thank you for having me.
Well, I would like to get your assessment on the supplementary elections over the weekend. Prior to this, INEC had assured Nigerians that they had learned lessons from the elections that happened presidential in February 25 and of March 18, the gubernatorial elections. However, what played out over the weekend from reports, scenes that we have seen, we've seen that there wasn't a lot that was learned in the past elections, as it almost seemed as if the same script played out. I'd like to hear your assessment on the elections, please.
Okay, thank you very much. In making an assessment, we have to use certain parameters, certain yardsticks. So I don't know which yardsticks you used in arriving at your conclusion. It's good to say, now, were materials delivered on time? Let's take the logistics, election day logistics. Did the materials get to the polling units on time? Two, were the officials sufficiently learned, sufficiently trained? Did they display capacity to understand the processes and undertook their responsibilities as is outlined in the manuals and in the law for that election? You might look at other things regarding the collation, the reverse logistics and stuff like that. That's in the aspect of the election management body, INEC. Then you look at security and you charge the security agencies. Were they up to their responsibilities? Did they do what was expected of them? Were they professional? Were they objective? Were they neutral? Then you look at that. Then you look at the voters. Did the voters turn out? Was it a large turnout? Did they behave themselves in the way expected? How did the party agents behave? So each sectorial body has to be taken on that. So I don't know whether you want an overall picture or whether you want us to take the security, you want us to take INEC, you want to take the voters or the political parties and their agents, which of them? In doing an assessment, we must compartmentalize each and look at the role each one played and whether they played their roles professionally as expected.
Well, Mr. Osaze-Uzzi, at the beginning of this program, I already, in commenting on this, provided, an outline of what was reported, during the weekend by the newspapers and also by observers who were on the ground, and statements that have been made by those observers and the conclusion that they have reached, that there were disruptions and all of that. But in the particular case of Adamawa, let's go to Adamawa. We were discussing Adamawa before you joined us.
Okay.
Now, isn't it curious that the Commissioner of Police accompanied the resident electoral commissioner to go and commit an act of illegality? Because the report said he was accompanied by the Commissioner of Police in that state. Is that really the regular thing to do? And what do you think should be done to that resident electoral commissioner who clearly had committed a serious infraction?
Yes. Well, a word that I've heard used repeatedly since that happened yesterday morning is bewildering. And I think that word captured the situation perfectly. It's totally bewildering to me and to many observers who watched the whole scenario. No, it is not unusual for a commissioner of police to accompany a resident electoral commissioner. If you look at all the collations, declarations in the state, you'll find out that it is usual for the commissioner of police in that particular state to be with the seated on his right or his left is the rec. The commissioner of police is usually there. The NSDCC is usually there. The collation and returning officer is there. There are certain people that are ordinarily expected to be there because it's usually a tense situation, and the police are there to ensure security. So I don't particularly accept his complicity one way or the other, but his mere presence, the mere presence of the Commissioner of Police with the resident electoral commissioner is not. There's nothing untoward in that, except he knew prior to that time what was going to happen. Yes, it is against the law. I think it's section 120, subsection 4 of the Electoral Act of 2022 makes it very specific that any person who knowingly declares a wrong result is guilty of an offense, and if found liable, he is liable to conviction for 36 months. That's the exact words of the section of the law, 36 months. I don't know why he did what he did. It's bewildering. I'm happy that I'm happy at the reaction of the commission. It was swift, it was decisive, and said, look, come and summon everybody to the returning officer, the REC, and everybody else. We haven't heard the whole story. I don't know why he proceeded to go the way he did. I don't know why he called the coalition forward, and whether he informed stakeholders that instead of 11 o'clock, it'll be 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock. He certainly is not the returning officer. Only the returning officer has a right to make a declaration. But there are occasions or there are scenarios where either the returning officer is not available, has gone incognito, nobody knows where he is, and the process must go on. There is a procedure and a process for that kind of situation where you cannot find the returning officer. And I think the duty is for the commission to appoint another returning officer. The resident electoral commissioner of the commission is not a returning officer. Prior to now, in the 2006 Act, prior to this time, the REC was the returning officer for governorship elections, but that's no longer the case. The only person that statutorily is a returning officer under the Electoral Act is the Chief Electoral Commissioner of the country. That is the chairman of INEC, is the returning officer for the presidential election. That is the only INEC official named by law to be a returning officer. As I said, the law was different before, but now it has changed. The commission can appoint anybody. If the commission decides to appoint him, that's a different scenario we're dealing with. But he was not the returning officer. No explanation that I'm aware of has been given to why the returning officer was not present, why it was not the returning officer who made the return. So yes, he's facing serious consequences if found liable. But the operative word there, if he knowingly decided to announce a wrong result. First of all, he had no authority to announce a result, and two, if he knowingly announced one, then he's in trouble. I'm afraid that the commission can't do much, really. The REC's position, the commission does not appoint the REC, as you well know, Ruben. It is the president acting on advice from the consultation appoints the REC. Now, if he appoints the REC, you assume has disciplinary control over the REC. But the only disciplinary control mentioned in the laws, either in the Constitution or in the Electoral Act, exactly in the Electoral Act, is that he can be removed. It's appointed by the president under the Constitution, but it can only be removed with the two-thirds address by two-thirds of the senators present addressing the president, and the president can remove him. But in the meantime, what the commissioner expect will do is, if they find him culpable in any way, is to strip him of his duties, because his duty is a delegated legislation, his delegated powers. All the powers of the commissioner are delegated to him. So if the person who delegates power to you and duties and responsibilities withdraws that delegation, then he might just be a resident electoral commissioner, but will have no responsibility, nothing else to do. That, I think, is the position.
Well, thank you, Mr. Osaze-Uzzi, for sharing with us and just reminding us in terms of how RECs are appointed. Thereby, it's not within the purview or the responsibility of the INEC commissioner or chairman. It is the president who nominates, and then he is approved. Would you say then, based on what we have seen in the last elections, and that's part of the assessment I was talking about, so for instance, take it back to the gubernatorial elections and presidential elections in Lagos State. A number of groups, including opposition parties, the Labour Party, the PDP, presidential candidates, had raised an alarm as to the fact that they were not comfortable with the state REC in Lagos State. Nothing was done. Now in Adamawa State, the governor has said that he had suspected and he had raised an alarm about the state REC being, if I could use the word, compromised or being partisan. Nothing was done, and now we see this show of shame. Should the mode of nomination, or perhaps the person who gets to be delegated with those powers, be devolved to INEC as opposed to the presidency?
Well, that is an interesting question which is subject to debate. Quite a number of people feel so. Some people feel that there should be a radical transformation. That look, you cannot appoint somebody and send him to an institution such as INEC. INEC has no say whatsoever in the appointment of resident electoral commissioners, but it must work with these commissioners. The law actually says that there's a new introduction that the REC is answerable to the commission, but that is just in the black letter law. In practice, not necessarily so. This idea that whoever appoints you have owe allegiance to the person. So that thought is there. And to be fair, civil society had raised eyebrows and objected, actually, went to the Senate and complained to the Senate that, look, a lot of this, I didn't know about this particular rec of Adamawa, but a lot of the recs that you appointed are partisan, either card-carrying members or have shown open sympathy for usually the ruling party or for one political party or another. And that is not the ideal. That is not our jurisprudence. That is not the way things work in this country. The law, the constitution after the amendment actually did say that you should be non-partisan. And the Electoral Act requires the recs and every official taking part in an election to swear to an oath of neutrality, in addition to all the oaths they swear when they take public office. So obviously anybody acting in a partisan manner, anybody that is compromised is breaching the laws and his oath of office, different oaths of office. Yes, and unfortunately, a lot of the time, political parties complain about one official, INEC official or the other. Sometimes there's substance behind those complaints. Sometimes it's just a red herring. They just complain. So it's difficult to see. But in this particular case, perhaps the subsequent actions of the Resident Electoral Commissioner, the governor might see some kind of vindication and say, look, I did warn you about that. In Lagos, complaints had been there before, but the same commissioner in Lagos, Resident Electoral Commissioner, had conducted elections in several states prior to now. He's the second term Resident Electoral Commissioner. I think he was in Osun when about 2 cycles ago, Resident Electoral Commissioner in Osun, there was a complaint that he was a partisan person. He was a personal assistant or a special assistant to one of the leaders of a political party at that time. And under Professor Jiga, he was excused. He was recused. He didn't want to recuse himself, but the commissioner moved him to another state and brought this same Mr. Agbaje, who is the Resident Electoral Commissioner in Lagos now, and he conducted the Osun governorship election. He has conducted elections in Kogi, in several other places. Allegations will always be there. Whether they're well-founded or not, well, subsequent events may prove one way or the other.
Okay, there was another incident in Adamawa. 2 national commissioners were sent there after this disruptive behavior by the resident electoral commissioner. Those national commissioners were attacked. One was stripped naked, the other one was brutalized, and they were not the ones that made the announcement. They were just national commissioners sent from the headquarters to go and oversee the process. Now, what level of protection do we have for, national commissioners of INEC during elections, particularly when they are on such assignments as going to oversee a process in a state?
Thank you very much, Dr. Bat, for that question. It's a relevant question we should really get into. In discharging an onerous task and the duties, especially statutory duties, I think you need the protection of the states that have sent you to do this job. And I saw online a lot of fake news, let me put it that way, because a lot of people said it was the Resident Electoral Commissioner that was beaten up. I'm not aware that the Resident Electoral Commissioner was harassed, beaten up, or anything. The person who's responsible for this, maybe call it an imbroglio that we're in, is actually Resident Electoral Commissioner. National commissioners are sent out on electoral duties to supervise and monitor what is going on. So when things are going wrong, they can intervene. And in this particular case, from my understanding, the Resident Electoral went ahead to the collection center. From what I hear, it was not to the knowledge of the national commissioners, but I may be wrong. Perhaps this investigation that the commission is going to undertake this morning will unravel a number of things. But they happened. It was unfortunate that they were maybe in the wrong place at the wrong time, and one of them really was manhandled. And he had nothing to do with the announcement by the Resident Electoral Commissioner. He was not at the collation center. He was not there. I think he was in the hotel, getting ready, because I understand that the collation was to commence at 11 a.m. So he was getting ready at about 9:30, 10, not knowing that an announcement had been made, and somehow people got to them. Usually, like many senior public officials, they're entitled to an orderly and security details as the need arises. But apparently, there was a security breach. I don't know what really happened, but there was a security breach, and people, a mob, it will appear, went and attacked this elderly gentleman. It was a very unfortunate thing, and obviously, I think the commission and the security agencies will have to, there was a failure of security, so they will have to look into ways on how to better protect more so, you can call him an innocent person in this particular instance, completely innocent of all that was going on. But he happened to be somebody who they could get hold of, and mob action, people were not interested in finding the facts. You know how mobs behave. And it's a very unfortunate thing, and it discourages decent people who would otherwise want to take on this responsibility. It will discourage them from wanting to take up any assignment with INEC or such public bodies. That is the danger in that. And I hope that the security agency will also look into this, and if also, apart from bringing those who made the announcement, illegal announcements, bringing them to book, I also hope that all those who undertook mob justice should also be made accountable for their actions. Everybody should be made accountable for their actions, good or bad.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Oluwole Osaze-Uzzi, for your time with us this morning.